So we're going to start chapter number 5 of Deirdre Carabine's book, John Scottus Eriugena. You can see it in the description if you want to read the book. And we are going to talk about Eriugena's anthropology. Let me put in full screen. So anthropology in the Periphysium is difficult, is talked about it in book number 4 of the Periphysium. And so Eriugena was swimming in dangerous waters here because he wasn't exactly orthodox in his views, and he is a very personal author, like a good Irish that he was. He has a very particular view, and his metaphysical epic is really, really original. So, but his lifeline are going to be Augustine, Ambrose, Basil, and Gregory of Nyssa. So these are early Christian thinkers with great authority in the church at the time, and he's going to support his theories on what they said, although without refusing to his very original approach, Neoplatonic in essence. Also in St. Paul's, to clarify human nature as the two main aspects that St. Paul addresses about human nature, which is the fallen state, which we're going to explain what it means and what it doesn't. This is very important. And the struggle of reason over sense. So the constitution, the role, the place of human nature in the scheme of natura. Remember, Eriugena has already established a scheme of natura that consists of 4 divisions of all nature, and we are going to delve now within that frame where human nature fits into all of that. Yeah. So you might think, oh, 9th century thinker, he's probably just religious, superstitious, not very systematic. Like, no. It goes deeper than any anthropologist that you can think of today. Yeah, I remember this conversation we had with this friend the other day about anthropology and how so much on the surface of empirical research it is. And that's clearly insufficient. And this deviates also into what's going on with psychology, psychiatry, medicine in general, as to how to address mental illnesses and the ailments ailments of the soul that people are suffering with today, and how the modern approach is actually insufficient. Yeah, and I think we're gonna get into hinting towards where we should go in order to deeply understand these conditions and deeply understand where their solution would lie.
Possibly more than hinting.
Possibly more than hinting, but maybe not in today's chapter.
Which is book 4, chapter 5.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
We're on the 6th day.
So one thing that is very important to understand about Eriugena's approach on how to address human nature is the fact that he's going to rely on Genesis. Let me go a little bit further into slide number 2 in order to show you what... so in the Carolingian era, Genesis was the ultimate heuristic. That means problem solving. In order to solve problems of a philosophical nature at that time in the 9th century, they relied a lot in Genesis. Yeah, which is very interesting because given the conclusions at which Eriugena arrived, to base yourself in the Genesis, which today will be like deemed as completely unscientific thing to do, he reaches very profound conclusions. Yeah, so let's go back to the first one.
Tell me about the unified whole.
The unified whole.
Yes, over here. We didn't quite get to that, did we?
Yes. So what this means is that everything that is said in the Periphysium is not just scattered information. Is all within a system, within a unified whole of the division of nature. So in the division of nature, in the Periphysium, what Eriugena tries to do or does is to divide nature in four, which actually is a division in two. He divides all nature between being and non-being. And from that division gets into the creator, who is uncreated, and then the created, which is creating, which will be ultimate causes. Human nature itself, I think it's within that realm, although human nature, we're going to see, that shares with the whole. It shares with the main, it shares with God in his nature, and that's why humans have this, I wouldn't say privileged, but special place in creation. They work as a link between the uncreated and the created. So that's why humans in Eriugena's anthropology, humans are very important. And I think he is right about that. But of course, you have to very well define how and in what regard humans are important in the whole scheme of creation. Because otherwise we could think, I'm going to make do you remember this image that we spoke about with the circle? How important, how good for visualizing what we're missing if we're missing this perspective, that visualization is. So we might get into that later if you remind me if you want to. So this allegorical exegesis of Genesis text.
My stomach just did a rumble. Did you hear it?
Yeah, I did. Nice. So it's based on the account of the created activity of the transcendent God. He's going to focus on the sixth day of creation, which is when human beings were created. And also Eriugena postpones, this is a very interesting idea. Just listen to this, because you think of the Bible and you have first, what do you have first? You have Genesis, right? And in the end, what do you have? You have the Apocalypse, So you have the beginning, you have the end, and the second coming, So what Eriugena does actually is like he puts actual paradise, actual Genesis in the end, So we're going to see how. So he postpones the attainment of paradise until the eschaton, which is the inevitable conclusion of his location of paradise in human nature itself.
Right.
So he's not going to put it in a place where human beings already exist, they already have been created, and they live in an actual garden. For him it's all allegorical, which actually is the wise way to go. And he's in the 9th century. You will think like, well, probably first Christians and early medievals, they probably thought everything was literally so. Well, actually not. It's like some people in America actually believe that, but not medieval thinkers.
Right.
At least not this one. I'm sure many of them did, and I'm sure there was polemics around that. But as a Neoplatonic thinker, he sees everything in more allegorical terms. And not only allegorical terms to assign to it a beginning, but also as an end. So paradise is something to which we are in the last unifying phase towards God, which is where paradise will be reached, which is at the core of how Eriugena thinks about human nature. So Genesis actually will be teaching the return of human nature to its source. So then we have the role of human nature in the universe, and how the end clarifies the beginning in relation to created natures. We could contrast this with the series Dark, which is very,
really thinking about that.
It's kind of very satanic in aesthetics, and the whole metaphysical concept is very much based on Schopenhauer, Nietzsche. You can see all that atmosphere of evil and desperation and resigning from following what God will say, and just try to make of time God himself and try to create loops so that there is an eternal loop that never ends. But it's always within the physical world. It's very dark. And in this philosophy you have it all. You have it the dark, you have the light, and there's no reason to fear or despair or to be too existentialistic about it. because it's all there. We belong to it already. There's no need for fear, yeah, which is basically what controls us, yeah. And this is the point why I'm doing this. Yeah, it's to get out of fear, yeah, for myself, for you, and for others, yeah. So, and Walti también, of course. God became not God through manifestation and self-creation in theophany while remaining God. So we have addressed these sort of paradoxical statements in previous videos. So in the process of being embodied in the material world, human beings become not human through its own self-creation. That is, through its willingness to turn away from its original nature. So all this logic that applied to God himself applies to human nature as well. So you see, so we participate from that nature wholly and completely. Yeah? It doesn't mean that we are God. It just means that we participate in it wholly and completely from the source. Yeah? So idea of human nature resides in the divine mind. Indeed, human nature is a primordial cause. Yeah? So this is, we spoke already about primordial causes. If you don't know what we're talking about, go back to the videos on theme number 4. So human nature can be seen as a reflection of Eriugena's understanding of the process of the revelation of God. So then we have that Eriugena's anthropology is theocentric in nature. Yeah? So we're going to feature
character. What's the
in its
difference
character.
between character and nature is the same? Or
No. So the feature of Eriugena's anthropology is its theocentric character.
Okay.
Sometimes I say the things that I write here, I say with different words, but it means the same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not an anthropology that is that has at its center the human himself. It's an anthropology that has as its center God himself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you were going back to your circle thing, like you were saying earlier, the pinpoint in the middle is God.
Yes. So the pinpoint is just an image. So imagine that this clock is all of creation, and this creation includes non-being, which will be outside the clock, but also the center of the clock. Yeah? So when you have that, you have the totality of it, the place from which you can start as your thinking point for anything else. Okay? Now, I explained in another video that what I see, this is just my opinion, is a bit of a psychological perception. I could be wrong. Okay? And of course, I'm not talking for every single scientist who doesn't believe in God. But it seems to me that many scientists, because they're very, very smart, and they want to they don't like things that they cannot sort of pin down without a contradiction. Yeah? Although we have also in the realm of mathematics a very problematic developments during the 20th century, which I would like to talk about one day, which is really fascinating. But the key thing to understand here is that it seems to me, this is a personal perception, that some scientists refuse to zero into the ultimate causes of the universe. So we get, it seems to me, okay, this is a personal opinion, a sort of scattered version of what creation really is. We try to find further and further, smaller and more complicated particles within an already really convoluted system. And instead of funneling in, zeroing in towards the causes and ultimate causes, because it seems to be impossible to get there just by really rigorous mathematical reason, what happens is we get into probability, and we scattered science into a very wide mesh of different operations that work mathematically, but they don't seem to really explain the ultimate origin of creation. Yeah. So some authors criticize this, and they say, well, if we're going to keep tuning into ultimate causes, it doesn't make sense that it gets more and more complicated. Yeah? So it's not to say that it's easy, but the ultimate explanation should be simple. And some authors make a case as to how science and ways of thinking about science, especially physics with mathematics, have gone always from the really complicated, manifold aspects of nature into really always more and more simple explanations that explain everything. Yeah. And what we are doing with the colliding or the different particles, you always have to find the sort of material cause of everything, when indeed it might not be material at the end of the day. And the ultimate reason that we might be able to do about it is actually metaphysical. Yeah, it's not just simply physical. This is just an idea to develop and to explore. I'm not saying that I know about this, but I'm very keen to investigate these aspects.
Yes.
And this is what has taken me to medieval ages. You know, it's kind of unexpected for myself, because it's like, okay, I need to think about these things. So who has addressed this? Yeah, philosophically, it seems to me that this author and also Neoplatonic, and I'm becoming more and more Platonic in my sort of philosophical approach to things. Now, that was a lot too much about me, okay?
No, not enough. So where are we up to?
There we are. I was explaining the whole thing about the clock.
Yes,
yeah?
That's right.
So if you take creation as the clock, and it's like that can be distinguished by the mind is the clock itself. You have infinity and you have non-being as that which the mind could possibly never ever explain, which will be the essence and the grandeur and the goodness of God, and that God will be at the center and it will be also outside the clock. Yeah? If you look at the clock as what it's representing, yeah, so let's say time, representation, and the whole of creation, yeah? So the clock will be an image for the whole of creation as a metaphor of, representing the metaphor being time, representing the whole of creation. If you look into that, if you refuse to go to the center and you start from any other point in the circle, you are going to be limited in your approach. It's not that it's wrong. It's not that you're not going to find truths within that. But your approach is going to be limited. If you're not claiming to be, to want to picture the whole picture, that's fine. You can go there. You can become an anthropologist, a physicist, a mathematician, anything you want, an engineer, and be an expert in that endeavor, and you're going to be very good. You're going to make a big service to humanity, and that's absolutely fine. If you want to get to ultimate causes and you don't start from the center and you start from any other point within the circle, you're always going to be limited to that point that shows the time. Yeah, think of the radius of the circle. Yeah, not the complete radius from the center of the circle, but from your center. And you say, no, the center is here. I refuse to go to the very center of creation, yeah, which is theocentric. And that's how humans have to think about themselves too, because they are the only ones who can really connect with that. If you refuse to do that, you go to another center that you put, let's say arbitrarily. Maybe it's too much to say it's arbitrarily, but just for now, let's suffice to say it's arbitrarily in any other point of that circle. You're going to put the radius towards the time, and that's your circle. And as you can see, that's where you're going to stay, and that's fine, but that's where you're going to stay. Yeah? So you're not going to access any knowledge and wisdom from the center. You're going to acquire your knowledge and your wisdom, which might be very valuable. Let me emphasize that, from that center. Yeah. So when you're trying to solve humanity's problems and you start from that center, you're going to be rolling that center, the center missing the actual center. Yeah. And not real problems are going to be resolved. And I'm not saying that we could try to solve all problems of the world, although we are,
Yes.
right? We're gonna try, okay? Okay, so with respect.
Yes.
Okay, so
We've done this bit down here.
we've done this bit. Now we're
Yeah.
gonna go to the second slide, and without forgetting to change, because then I change, I
Yes,
don't
that's
change,
right.
and I'm gonna go full screen, and this is beautiful. So 5.1, the Genesis story. So we have already said the place of Genesis in all this is 6 days, and is the importance of it. We have already spoken about. We're gonna start with the conclusion. All living things are created in human nature. How about that? All living things are created in human nature. Remember this poem that I wrote? We might put this poem here,
Yes.
because I'm very surprised actually.
Can you expand upon that? Can you talk around that point a bit more?
We're going to.
Okay,
This
good.
is what,
Well, that's excellent news. Let's do
yeah,
that now, shall we?
Yeah. So let's do it.
Yes.
If you have any, if you want, you can interrupt me. Is the things that I'm doing
No.
here, but that's, no?
I'm not going to interrupt you, John.
Okay, that's all right. So, human. Under the genus of animal, so the genre of animal, and in the image of God. So we have these two contrasting ideas of
Yes.
which human nature participates in both. He is an animal, but he is also made in the image of God. Again, we have the dialectical way of going about these very profound themes. Okay? So we're going to get to the same conclusions as we did with God himself. Be and yet not be. An animal possesses and yet not possesses animality. Yeah?
Yes.
So he is an animal, and at the same time he is not
Yes.
an animal. Yeah? He is made of flesh, but at the same time he is spirit. Okay?
Yes.
So human nature, I love this, is the workshop of all. Yeah? Human nature is the workshop of all. We
Tell
should-
me about human nature.
Yeah, let's continue.
I'm
But-
so excited. I'm
yes,
so sorry.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm jumping ahead. Let me get
So
comfy.
he's inspired by Maximus the Confessor here. It's like human nature is the container of all creation. Yeah? So we have access to the center. Yeah? And we can contain all creation within ourselves. Yeah? Remember when Christopher says in the advanced course of Buteiko, he says like you are the all. You are. It's not just you're not just part of it. You are that. Yeah. This doesn't mean that you are God. Okay. You have to be very careful there, because if you are God, this will be a solipsistic concept, and this is totally evil, which will mean that I exist but you don't. Yeah. Which you could say the same. This is complete contradiction. Okay. Because you could say the same thing, then I wouldn't be existing, and I couldn't say what I'm saying, despite the fact that I just said it, yeah, because I exist and you also exist,
Yes.
yeah, and at the source of existence of both of us is the same core, but this doesn't mean that you are the all, yeah, but you contain the all, however, in there you have access to it, you have access to that center, yeah. Jesus talks about this in the Bible. It's like, I did all these deeds and greater than those you will also do. This has to be correctly understood, but he says that, you see. It's very profound. So since human nature, both body and spirit, in all creatures, visible and invisible, the whole spread of creation is understood to inherit. To inherit, I think this means, yeah?
Ah,
To inherit.
in here.
I'm not quite sure, but this could be a mistake actually. But it doesn't get into confusion, because it's so human nature is both body and spirit.
Yes.
So then Eriugena says, all creatures visible and invisible, the whole spread of creation is understood to be there. Yeah? So this is the idea.
Do you think spirit is, because obviously body is visible. How much of spirit do you think is visible and invisible? Because obviously you are acting from your spirit or from spirit, so that it makes it it visible in its action, but the actual spirit itself is invisible.
Well, you just said something. I was going to say something, and you changed my mind, like right away, because you say you see it in the movement. You see it.
Yeah.
It's like you can, when you're alive and
Yeah.
you connect with spirit, with other spirits. Yeah.
Well, it's like what we were listening to yesterday about the logos of like it's what makes your book different from my book. It's like it's a book, but it's like you'll know straight away as you start. Like if you started walking differently, you'd be like there's something different, you know.
Yes.
People move and operate from a place of spirit.
But this would, yes, sure. But yes, I agree. And
I don't know though. I'm just
no, absolutely. And spirit is what actually gives you your individuality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. However, spirit in its essence has no attributes.
Yes.
And yet it will be at the core of those attributes that make you you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like this again. The center of the clock image is so good because it's so simple, but it's like the center of the clock is like it's actually what moves you. Let's say like, now is how someone moves. Yeah. And it's a reflection of their innermost personality, also a reflection of their history. Of the injuries that they might have, of how they block as children. They blocked an emotion, and that sort of fixed their movement for the rest of their lives. And when that movement, when that blockage or that trauma is healed, they seem to lighten up. When people have changed and they get better, you can see a change in them. They walk different, they express themselves different. Yeah. If you saw me when I was 25 as how I'm now, you'll be like, wow, is that you? Yeah. And yet you could still see an essence in it.
The essence. I think that's it. The essence. There's the attributes and there's the essence, the substance.
Yes.
But then also I was just thinking about nature and nurture, because obviously maybe movement is a bad example because it could be that you were conditioned by observing the people around you, how you should dress or how you should walk or how but how much is...
I think it's a good example, actually.
You do? Okay. Well,
look at dancing, for example. It's an expression of the soul. It's an expression of spirit. When people, start dancing. My mother, for example, she has some difficulty with movement. As soon as she starts dancing with my father, they just like, whoa, the whole thing gets just so beautiful, Yeah. So it's quite... So any aspect, any attribute has as its essence actually spirit. Yeah. Yes.
So what were you going to say before I changed your mind?
Yes, I was going to say that spirit has no attributes, so it's invisible. Yeah. But of course it transfer its expression into who you are in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. The key distinction when it comes to these spiritual things applied to life as we see it is the word life itself. What gives you life? What takes life from you? What is sucking the life out of you? And what is actually giving you, what you feel the spirit like sort of resonating from you. Yeah. So that's the thing. That's where you see it in real life. And it's a very clear distinction. But if you don't believe in that and you just go for the material, or you start or evolution and things like that, I have nothing against those things. I just think they're insufficient. That's all. Yeah. Okay, so dialectical division again. So we have the animal and we have the non-animal. Shares higher nature with angels, the non-animal part of it, as it is, and the animal part of it is as its lower nature is concerned. Okay, so human nature, this greatest and most precious species of animal, shares sensation with the beasts and nutritive forces with reptilian life. Okay, so again we're here, under the genius of animal and at the image of God. Is this dialectical? There is no actual separation. There is no actual separations, but we are both at the same time. Man participates in this, in sensation and nutritive forces, together with all other animals, And conversely, all the other animals participate in them in common with him. Yeah? So there's a unity here that is kind of like starting to emerge. Yeah, and the conclusion is beautiful, you'll see. Since human nature is in all animals, and all animals are in human nature included in the genus of animals. So human nature can be included in the genus, in the genre of animal.
I feel like I should bring
So
royalty in.
we shouldn't deny the animal part of us. It's just part of our nature, because actually it's what's going to connect us with, it's like we are spiritual beings. We have this beautiful dog who's
We
teaching
do.
us love and, freshness of being and all these beautiful things. But we are the connection. We are the ones who connect those two worlds. Here he is, as a proof of it. Hoti.
Good boy.
Okay, so, and then on this other part of the dialectical, we have non-animal, shares higher nature with angels. Human nature cannot be defined, the same as we saw with God. That very essence of what we are, as when we peel the onion in actual practical spirituality, yeah, we will never get to that center. But when as we get towards that center intentionally, a spring of life will come towards us, yeah, in the form of ideas, in the form of knowledge, in the form of inspiration, in the form of creativity, in the form of, in the material sense, like having children. I mean, think about that. The fact that humans can just bring other humans from, the female body of the human gender, yeah? Which gives you an idea of what abortion actually represents, yeah? Indiscriminate, complete, nonsensical view of abortion as a right instead of a tragedy, yeah? Okay, so Paul says, it is sown an animal body, it will rise a spiritual body. So this is taken from Paul. Remember he was going to hang on authorities of early Christianity, and Paul being one of the main ones. So the dual aspect is a result of the fall. This is going to become important later. The fall from grace through the sin of Adam and Eve. This is going to require some explanation. In its animality, it turns to temporal and corruptible things toward evil, and its spiritual nature, it turns away from the world and its fleshly nature towards God. Okay, so it's going to be important to distinguish that we are not material. We are not animals because of the fall. We were holy and sacred as we are. The fall is a different concept. It doesn't imply that we are material because of the fall. Yeah? So in fact, the materiality that we share with nature is actually substantial to human nature, and is what connects one and the other and gives us an idea of our role in it.
But can you say more about the fall and what?
We will. I can't say much yet because, first, I'm not an expert. I'm not sure exactly what he is going to say. But it's important to distinguish it. Because other types of Christian will tell you, well, the fall is actually this whole materiality and we need to transcend it.
Right.
Yes, we need to transcend it. We will transcend it. But that doesn't mean that, in essence, we are not animals shared with the essence of essential spirituality. Yeah? Well, this is gone. Okay. Okay, so enough with this slide. We're going to get out of the thing, and we're going to get here.
You've done this bit.
Yeah, well, this is when I human nature, animal through freedom, spiritual through grace.
I like it.
Yeah, that's a thought. When I do this type of framing, it means that it's sort of like an isolated statement within the whole thing. I thought it was very interesting. I want to explore this because it says human nature, animal through freedom,
Yes.
and spiritual through grace.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I think spiritually also through freedom, and animal through grace. I mean, there's a lot of positive things to say about the animal side, actually.
Yeah. For sure.
I'm not against the body at all. Okay, so where am I? Yes, I'm going to change this. Let me make sure that I did the correct thing. No, I didn't. I didn't change. We have to change it here. And now we did. And
Did we do
here
it for
we
the last
are.
one?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
So how can the rational and the irrational be in the same genus? How can the irrational, the animal part, and the rational, be in the same being?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's because rational and irrational animality is one of difference, not of contradiction. Why such statements allowed about human nature but denied to the genus animal? It's because human, so we participate of both, but other animals wouldn't, yeah? So human nature is alone in the image of God, okay? This doesn't mean that all creatures, that this doesn't gives us the wrong rights over the rest of nature. It just situates us, yeah?
Yeah.
This is important. It's like, it's not that we can do whatever the hell we want. It just means what our place is.
Yes.
Yeah? This is very important later for moral philosophy, okay?
This is also reminding me of the debate around whether you should eat meat or not.
Yes.
But that's
Well,
not for now, that's for another time.
Fucking hell, we'll get into that. Yeah. I think about that a lot, actually. I'm kind of, I wouldn't say conflicted, but I understand the arguments, although I think there's other good arguments on the other side. So it's certainly something to consider.
We return.
Just as mutually adverse predicates on divine nature can also be said of the image of that nature. So just as mutually adverse predicates on divine nature can also be said of the image of that nature. What does it mean? We saw that we can have seemingly contradictory predicates about divine nature. The same is going to happen about human nature. The whole of creation that is created in human nature includes not only sensible corporeal realities, but also intelligible celestial realities. Human nature, as it was intended to be, has the same status as angelic intellects. So human nature, including the animals, it was meant to be. And this connects with history and where all these beautiful, so in reality, you know what some authors do, like they take Genesis, they take the Bible and say there's something here historical. This is not what Eriugena is doing. He's a Neoplatonic thinker. He's going to take everything more from the allegorical perspective. It's going to see almost every Neoplatonic thinkers tended to do that. Take everything from the allegorical perspective. They didn't care so much about history. Yeah, they did, but not so much. They're sort of wanted to discover what the ultimate principia were. Yeah, so human nature, as it was intended to be, has the same status as the angelic intellects. Remember, human nature, as it was intended to be, includes the body, includes being as an animal in nature, and yet it's angelic. It has access. It should be having access to the intellect. Many intellectuals are telling us we could do this, and the fall can be seen in allegorical form as well, or it can be seen as something that historically, actually, or genetically happened to us. Yeah, something happened, something went wrong. Yeah. And the Garden of Eden and the whole of Genesis allegory points to something that actually did happen. And that's one center within the very center that one could explore. You could go there and go like dig deep into that and look into from the point of view of psychology, of biology, of spirituality, and trying to delucidate if actually something happened with us. Yeah? What went wrong? This is actually a fair question because something's wrong. Yeah? So how deep this wrongness goes is this research about the fall. So where did we fall? It's not so much that we are at fault by nature. Yes, look at what Eriugena is saying here, that we belonged to the angelic realm. Yeah. So again, very interesting. We'll get into that hopefully. But would human nature have remained animal if it had not sinned? That is, yes. Yeah, this is what I was saying.
Yes.
So even with sin, yeah, or what some the Catholics, I was born a Catholic, but Catholics say there's this original sin. I find that very problematic. I will adhere more to, yes, in nature there's nothing really wrong, but something went wrong. I will explore that from a historical perspective as well. So animal nature is not a punishment for disobedience. The fault was irrational action in turning toward the material through dishonoring the natural dignity of its nature by improper activity.
Can you define improper?
Well, improper activity is immoral action. Yeah? So you decide what's wrong and what's right.
Right.
So I see the tree of good and evil. I'm going to decide. I'm going to say, I'm going to take the central point of from which also morality stems, and I'm going to put the center point of morality somewhere else. And that somewhere else, then morality becomes relative to those different points instead of the central point. That's why I think morality is actually one of the actual movers of the universe and the actual laws that you have to obey in the universe, or you have to know, the same as you have to know that there's gravity. Yeah, you wouldn't do something as stupid as jumping off a cliff expecting to fly, because gravity is a law. Well, it's the same. You cannot expect to murder someone and get away with it. You won't. Yeah, but instantaneously, even by thinking about it, you're already creating some damage within yourself. Yeah, and the punishment is immediate. Yeah, in sort of, let's say, the word karmic sense. Yeah, but also it should be applied by the will of the good people in actual reality. Yeah, no one should get away with murder. No one. Human nature would have been animal even without sin, for it was not sin but nature which made an animal of him. Beautiful. I like this philosopher. The more I look into it, the more I like it.
Do you want to say anything about the pictures you've chosen for here?
Sure. Let me finish with this, and
Yes.
we can. You're going to tell me about the pictures.
Am I?
So why then did God create human nature in the genus animal, a genus in which human is not destined to remain, since when the world perishes, all animality will perish with it? Eriugena's answer is, he wished so to fashion him that there might be one among the animals in which his image was expressly manifested. Which is a very Christian thought, which is a very beautiful thought, in my opinion. Okay, so yes, you want to talk about the images?
Well, because when we were doing the test before, I was asking you what this line was.
Yeah, the line. This seems to be either the word, so this is God and comes out of his mouth, and this is Adam. And so God created Adam from clay, but life into this, inert piece of clay came through his breath. Yeah. So this is a beautiful allegory, because what we are ultimately, and our connection with God is from the fact of life, that we are alive. We are not alive just because we have some cells and tissue that is coordinated in a certain way, and some inert matter one day gains some level of consciousness, start to grow by itself, that you could go there through science and find those truths about that. But that is actually not what we are. And you don't need to go to biology to understand that. You have to go to metaphysics to understand that. Of course, you can make lots of reconciliations between the two. Yeah? So there's no point of being anti-science. In fact, it's the opposite. Yeah? Science should be on the service of the truth. And when it's not, science becomes, through corrupt bureaucrats, a fucking lie that enslaves us. And that's where we are today. Yeah.
Well, it was just making me think about this breath. So if God gave life to Adam through his breath, and then he did the same for Eve as well, did he?
Well, Eve was born from a rib of Adam, which.
But then the breath would also have come from Adam, which has come from God. So then, could you then say that all of us, the breath, is linked with God?
Yeah, you mean breathing itself?
Yeah, if he gave life to something that didn't have life, and the life is the breath that he gave, then that breath has somehow passed. I'm just thinking also, do you know the Herman cake? I think it's called Herman cake. I think it's a German thing, and it's got a yeast, or it's got something like a growing thing, and it keeps on, and you can then, I'm just going to look it up because it has like a parent one, and then I could give some of this thing to you, and you can make a cake, and you would then give some of your one to someone else, but it's all coming from the original source.
Yes.
It's all come from this.
Yes.
But it continues growing and growing and growing, and then it could be like everyone in your family and everyone and their families. It's all come from the same original.
Beautiful,
I'm just going to look up Herman cake. You can continue.
Herman cake.
I think it's a Herman cake. And you have to feed it. Yes, it's a friendship cake. There's a starter which is passed from person to person. It continues to grow with the yeast and lactic acid bacteria. One starter can, in theory, last indefinitely. The other ingredients for the mixture. So you obviously have the other ingredients. Yeah. But you then have this thing which someone gives you in a bag.
Yes.
And then it keeps growing, and you then give some of this, but it's come from an initial starter.
I think that's the perfect culinary allegory.
Trust me to link it to cake. But you know what I mean? It was just making me think of that. Of like, if the first breath came from God, then every other breath that is breathed by everyone else, where's it come from?
From God.
Exactly.
Exactly. So if you extirpate humans from that center of the clock now representing humanity itself, then you might do good things with it, but you're gonna miss something, and the circle's gonna be closed. It's not gonna be infinite. Infinite within the infinity of life itself. So here we go. I think we're gonna leave it there. What do you think?
Oh, is that the end?
It is the end, yeah.
Oh no, well it's not. It's the end of this part. Stay tuned for more.
Awesome. That's good. Now I gotta get out of here.
Yes.
Boom. Thank you.